Welcome everyone to today's really powerful episode. Today I have got School of Integrative Healing student and also mental health coach who is trauma-informed Ulli, and I am so happy to have a conversation with her today. We've actually just been having a chat and be like, why haven't we recorded this? Because it's been so good. So I'm excited to what comes out when we've actually hit the record button. Welcome, Ulli.
Thank you so much for having me, Hannah. And I am super excited that we finally pushed the recording button.
We're like, are we recording a podcast or are you just having a chat about life? Like, that's how we started this. I'm going to kind of also put here that Ulli is a private client, which I think is definitely why we're just used to hopping on a call and going straight into conversation, as well as a student in the School of Integrative Healing. But Ulli, just super briefly, before we go on, I would love for you to share with everyone listening what exactly you do and why do you do it?
I actually have started around 2017 with yoga and movement and like getting into the body. And at one point last year, I figured that this ain't enough. Movement and nutrition is not enough. And I come from a background where my mother is a psychologist and all my best friends studied psychology. So I have that kind of background, and I realized that this is so important. Like, our mental health is so important, and to address it without being sick and without having an illness is such an advantage. And I was stumbled for you, happily, luckily, I think via Gina. And yeah, I just knew that I had to work with you. I saw you on Instagram and I was like, okay, I need to work with you. How can I? And yeah, this has helped me to develop my own style. Now I'm doing I'm holding space for women in groups and in one-on-ones, and I am making and creating a container where I bring yoga and ancient traditions together with the modalities you have taught me and with today's science. And yeah, because I also love the sciencey stuff.
How great are our students? These are the women that I get to teach in the School of Integrative Healing, and I hear you speak and I'm like, yes, life is great. And yeah, Ulli was a very interesting sign up experience. I literally get a message from Instagram and it was absolute clarity. I need to work with you. I don't know why I need to work with you, but I need to work with you. And then that was the essence of it. And then we hopped on a call and she's like, yeah, I'm becoming a private client. And then what was it that you got for the money? You got, this was bonkers. What was it? Was it like insurance?
Yeah, it was like I had 2,000 euros left for, fun money to spend on whatever in my bank account. And then I actually expected something like 2,500.
No.
Nowadays, like looking back in hindsight, that's hilarious. I don't know what I thought, but that's where I was at. And then you told me like 10,000 or something. That was like, holy guacamole. How should I ever get that money? And I was like, you know what? I don't want to just be in the IH container. I am signing up anyways. And I went back home because back then I was in South Tyrol with my boyfriend. And then I went back home to Innsbruck, Austria. And I opened my mail. And there was a letter from an insurance company that I am not with. And I opened it and it said, you just got an insurance money back about 7,988 euros. And I was like, what? Called my mom. She was like, nah, I don't know what this is. Called my grandma and she was like, I don't really know what that is, but like 10 years ago, I made a deal for you, but you should have gotten that money 5 years ago. I was like, I never got any money. And then I called the company the next morning and they told me yeah, they tried to find my address, but they couldn't find me anymore. And only 5 years later, they are allowed to legally find it out via the system. And that was that exact time where I needed those 8,000 euros. So
It's just,
it still gives me chills.
it's just incredible. And I love this. And Yuli's like, you know, in your head, you're like, holy guacamole. But what I perceived was, I told you, we had a discovery call and you're like, cool, yeah, I'm in. Like Yuli was so clear, even though there was fear. And I think this is what made that manifestation so fast for you, because it was instantaneous almost. She was so clear. She decided on the call, you told me that it was a full yes, right? And I always teach this in manifestations when we're kind of leaky energying, like I'm in, but I'm not in. My foot's like, you know, Yuli wasn't like, my toe is in and I'll tell you in a week. No, Yuli was like, this is a yes, this is happening. I don't know how it's going to happen. And so when we make a decision and we're that clear with the universe, then the resources appear, whether they're time, whether it's money, whether it's whatever resource you need to make that happen, it appears. And so I really admired, honestly, your courage, because even though that the fear was there, you still did it, and you did it really quickly, and you didn't let the fear win. And it's so beautiful, Yuli, and I know that this is down to the work that you did prior to the School of Integrative Healing as well, is that, and what I love to see is a woman trusting her intuition, right? You got a ping that you needed to work with me, and you didn't question it, and you just did it, and the universe supported you. And it's that simple. But we often, I'm sure this has happened to you as well, we ignore our intuition because it doesn't feel logical. It doesn't make sense.
It's a little bit like second guessing it, like this is almost too easy to be true and to be working.
Yeah.
And I think so many women and people in general have that, like they have a connection to their intuition, but they don't really trust it enough. So I think that's more the problem, not that there is no intuition, because we all have it. Some have it stronger, some have it lighter, but the trust that you cannot see it and that you need to trust that it will show up eventually, that is, I mean, it's still hard for me, don't get me wrong. It's not that for me everything is easy, but this experience has taught me so much. And I think one of the things that I have, like, that has had the strongest impact on me is actually the payment. Like, even before everything started, that payment process has shifted so much in my internal reality. So now I know why it is important and activating to not like charge what feels comfortable, because there is so much growth in the payment process.
Oh my God, you just said so many good things. Like, where do I even start? The transformation is in the transaction. You know, I continue investing, and with new levels of business, I invest new levels of money. So 10K seems like a very small investment to me now. And it's exactly what Yuli was saying. It's like, you've got to meet that edge to grow. You've got to meet that edge. And you did it, and you absolutely did it. And do you know what? Yuli said to me what she would like to discuss today. And I think I'm going to direct us into that, is that very often in Instagram, and this is a really fun conversation to have, we see a lot of business coaches being like, I made this many million, do my program and make this many million. And they don't talk about the things that we experience and go through to hit those financial targets, or sometimes that can be talked about less. And actually, when we hopped on the call before and we were just having a little chat, Yuli said to me, I think it would be really powerful to share the actual stuff that we overcome and go through to hit those new levels of wealth, right? And I thought, wow, yeah, that's absolutely right. We want that to be an open conversation. And actually what we're doing in the School of Integrative Healing isn't running around with rainbows coming out of our assholes. It's actually navigating the stuff that people don't want to talk about. I think that would be a really good way to put it. So, Yuli, what's been something that you've navigated that has been uncomfortable, but has brought you to somewhere you want to be. The pain for integrative healing was one of them.
Yeah, that was definitely one of them. And I mean, so much has shifted. It feels like 5 years since we started IH. My self-image completely shifted. Before that, I mean, I have been self-employed since 2017, but just like it was just last December or something that I actually saw myself as a self-employed woman. And that before that, it was not the way I introduced myself. And since December, I'm just like, if someone asks me what I do for a living, I just say, I am a coach and I teach yoga teachers how to teach yoga properly and stuff like that. And before that, I was always, yeah. And as a side hustle, I also am a little bit self-employed for fun, but I treated it like a hobby. And it's not. That would be a fucking expensive hobby, like too much time for just a hobby. So I take it seriously and I take my desires seriously. I think that's just such an important thing to do, to really see our desires and take them seriously and not lightly. They are so important. And ever since I took my desires seriously to become a self-employed coach and like a self-made woman, I have constantly like grown, and the growth is so uncomfortable, and it still is. I think there is no point where you can say, yeah, the growth is so much fun, because it's like a birthing pain. I always compare it a little bit to birthing, because you're birthing a new version of yourself into being. And actually, this is where I am at the moment. And it still feels a little bit shaky to talk about it while I'm in the process. But I think that's what I need for my new expansion, to be like 100% authentic and to show myself in all the ways I am right now, not just talk when I went through it. And so, yeah, at the moment I am like experiencing my upper limits. January has been the most successful month in my business. I filled out my first like long-term program, my first high ticket program. I signed my first one-on-one clients who like were willing to actually stay with me long-term, pay me proper money. And that felt uncomfortable. I was like, okay, so I made 10K this month. How can I sustain that? How can I make 10K next month? I need to make at least 10K next month. Otherwise, I am not worthy. I am an imposter if I don't make it next month. So that were the thoughts that came to me. And those 10K in my account felt so uncomfortable. I immediately that's so funny. I had to bring my car to the mechanic and I had to pay 1,500 immediately. The insurance for my car came in, which was another 1,000. And so there were so much invoices coming in because I felt so uncomfortable with having like 10K made by.
Oh, it's frozen and this is so good. Come back. She's going to come back. And Adam,
and into my programs.
It just cut out for a second. Uili, do you mind just repeating that last sentence? It was just the last sentence and then I'll start.
What was the last sentence? I prevented myself from getting new clients coming in and from new clients joining my classes and courses because it feels so unsafe to actually make a lot of money myself. And this is something that I am learning at the moment, and that is really, really uncomfortable. And that brings up all my fears and all my insecurities. And yeah, what I actually want to like let everyone know that listens to this podcast is that you're not alone in there. And this will come time again and again and again. And the only reason why I can get through it in a kind of nice way and a kind of secure way is because I have this network of amazing women and of tools that help me to get through it and that help me to process faster and digest it easier. So Yeah, that is what I can recommend to everyone. Please get yourself some support going through those, yeah, obstacles that will be in your way.
It's so beautiful what you've just shared. I actually love listening to you, Ulli, as you speak. I'm like, oh, this is so good. What was the quote that we went through in session the other day? It's like, obstacles don't block the path, obstacles are the path. And so because Ulli has hit an upper limit, like she called it, of wealth, all of her stuff is coming up. And so that's what happens. It's not just like, you know, oh, 10K months, I've hit my goal. Life is easy now. It's like actually hitting our goals triggers our self-sabotage behaviors, like Ulli was mentioning, right? And so the power of being in a container like this is that you are being educated on what's happening. Because imagine you're going through this alone, you hit 10K, right? And then suddenly all these bills keep coming and you're like, what the fuck is happening? Then you're not going to actually know how to transmute the self-sabotage and actually realize that this is a good thing. And so hitting all of our goals, whether they're financial goals or whether they're relationship goals or whether they're happiness goals, are always going to trigger our stuff. It's like it's part of the process. So we need to actually know that that's not wrong. That was such a liberation for me when I realized what I considered, because I called them failures in my head, weren't failures, they were growing pains. You know, actually, Ulli, when I changed something, it's so funny when you said it, you used the growing pains term. When I started kind of remodeling things in the business, I started getting pains in my pussy. And I was like, what the fuck is happening? And so I sat down and I channeled and I sat with my higher self, and it was like, these are your growing pains and you are physically manifesting them. When I noticed that, when I realized that, gone, not since there. So the body is absolutely incredible. And so even when the body's kind of giving you pains, if we can sit with it and instead of making it wrong, I just want it to go away and listen to it, listen to your body and listen to your life, that's where your healing happens, right? And I think you're going to agree, Ulli. Having a business is like personal development. It's like healing on heat. It's like you've got to really be, you've got to be really open to healing. You've got to be really willing to heal if you want to have a business. I mean, I think it's like a non-negotiable, right?
Yes. I think like if you know beforehand what having a business means, many people would not sign up for that. I'm not sure if I would. I mean, I love being like responsible for myself, but at the same time, it is hard. It is so freaking hard. And I think it's a good thing that you don't know what you sign up for, maybe. But yeah, it's for me, it's like even more intense than like being open in a relationship, even more intense than like looking for happiness or moving to like another country. I've done all of that stuff and that was intense, but it was not as intense as having my own business, because it is a mirror. And it's not just a mirror from the front, but it's a mirror from the side and a mirror from behind. So basically you see all your flaws and all your self-sabotaging and all your beliefs that you have, and you cannot just close your eyes, because if you do, everything will crumble and it will not work. And I think that's a beautiful thing. It makes you like look at yourself from so many different angles and really work on yourself. But you need to be equipped for that. Otherwise, it can really, really bring you to a dark place.
Absolutely. I'm going to reframe a little bit of the language. I don't want to say that business is hard. I want to say business requires persistence. It requires not just commitment, but you're going to have to commit most days, most hours, most minutes. Uncomfortable if you're not used to facing yourself. And this is, and the thing is though, I think the more that we face ourselves, because I don't want to call it flaws. I don't like to see us as flawed. I would say the parts of us that need healing. What business does is it's going to open all the doors in those parts of your psyche that you've not wanted to look at. And so it's not for the faint-hearted. If you want to not evolve, if you don't want to change, if you don't want to see yourself, if you don't want to do the work, business probably isn't for you. I feel like, but for those of you, and I know you're this, Uili, because I know how beautifully you take responsibility for all of your stuff, even if it's uncomfortable, even if you don't want to, even if there's a trauma response. I know that you do. And the reason that I want to reframe it from being hard is that sometimes we see business as complicated and business as, and it's not. The thing that's uncomfortable is the facing the parts of ourselves that doing the things brings up. And I think Joanna's episode was so beautiful because she was talking about, like, you know, how business advice is like show up authentically, and showing up authentically for her was bringing up a trauma response. And if she didn't know that that was a trauma response, that is exactly that what Uili says. Business is going to feel bad, and you're not going to understand the why, and you're not going to see it as an opportunity, and it's not going to be a story of triumph, right? It's going to be a story of, this felt really bad, and then I felt really bad about myself. And I think that's why we have to have these supportive networks. And, you know, Uli's in the School of Integrative Healing, and I'm in another coaching container where I literally listen to my coach every single day for when I'm navigating one of these pieces and I'm like, that's probably not a nice noise to hear on an audio, but it's a very accurate representation of how I'm feeling. And also we want to normalize that, even though I think this is the interesting mind fuck. Every level of business feels easier. Every level of business gets easier, but every level of business still, you know what they say, another level, another devil. It's still restructuring and remodeling parts of yourself inside and shifting bits of your consciousness. And that never goes. So like us business owners, when we get to 80, we're going to be so wise. We're going to be like, we're not going to need another life in planet Earth. It's
you know, bring some wisdom to the people.
Yeah, exactly. It's all worth it.
And you know what? I really, really love that you called me out on the way I talk about business, because, and that's something so important, because everyone listening could just hear my belief that I now have, that business is hard. And I'm working on that at the moment. But that's so interesting because I didn't even realize it, and how we talk about ourselves and our business just shone through a little bit. And this is something I started to be really aware of. I'm still not perfect, as you could see, and that's absolutely fine. We are not meant to be perfect, but having someone that like calls you out on that stuff, like me saying business is hard and I am flawed, just helps so much, because our self-chatter is so important. Because if we're constantly feeding ourselves with being like not successful, not worthy enough, not, I don't know what you're telling yourself, but that's stuff that I tell myself. And if I'm constantly telling myself that like 10 times every day or 100 times every day, what should I believe? Of course, I believe that I am not successful enough and that business is hard for me. But the more we have people like calling us out on that, the less we think about it and the more aware we become about it. And that's what changes our perception of ourselves. That's what changes our self-image. And that is key.
Beautiful. So beautiful. Absolutely. And I think a big part of the work that we do is making the unconscious conscious. And so, like Uili said, she didn't even notice that she said that, because it's just something that's always been there. It's unconscious. And if you want to have a laugh, last week I recorded the podcast with my coach, and she called me out, and it was great because, you know, you'll have to listen to it. I said a sentence. She's like, we've talked about this. And I'm like, oh, damn, it's still in my unconscious. But ever since she called it out, I've been even more aware of it. And every time it comes up in my head, I'm like, no, that is the old belief. And do you know how we create new belief? And it really is this simple. It's like you stop giving energy to that old belief and you give more energy to the new belief, right? Sometimes our minds can't handle the simplicity of it. But I think the barrier that we encounter is that very often we don't notice that we're nourishing the old belief. And so that's kind of the calling out, is really just someone putting up a mirror to yourself. And so just to kind of piggyback off what Uili was saying, your belief creates your results. It's a science. It's 100% of a science. So if Uili is believing, and this is why it's so important for me to bring this up, or for any of you listening, because we've received so much messaging that business is sacrifice and business is hard and people that are successful have shit relationships, you know, all of this, right? So if you're believing that, that's what you're creating in your life. And it's through changing the belief that we change the result, because life is just a manifestation of your consciousness. We're getting a bit deep right now, and I think that's maybe we'll leave it for the podcast, right? But your belief creates your results. And if we can change the belief, your results change. And so what Uili, the transformation that Uili is going through right now, which feels icky, is transforming the belief that business is hard to letting business be easy. And I feel like we need to do another podcast, Uili, in 2 months. And Uili's going to be like,
fun. That would be fun.
Yeah. She'll be like, oh, look what's come through now.
Yeah.
But it's good that we have this too. So we're seeing the process, right? Because the process is navigating this stuff.
Yeah, and it's always, of course, easy, like when you're listening to this, just like a word out for everyone who is listening. When you're listening to this, have a look. If you're judging my story, and if you're saying, like, yeah, for her, it's easy because she has X, Y, Z, and finding excuses why I can do it, why I can navigate it, and why you can't. That is probably the last thing that I want to give to the audience, because that is another really big game changer, finding excuses why it works for others and not for you. Because stuff working out for me is just proof that you can do that too.
Beautiful. I think we close with that. Yeah, you nor I are special. Do you know what the one thing we've done? Taken responsibility and have committed to the work.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Uili, for being here. Thank you so much for everyone listening. If you want to dive deeper into this work, I've got a free couple of workshops next week on integrative wealth. So healthy wealth, the science of having it all, right? And diving deeper into the stuff that me and Uili were talking about, what happens when things get really good, right? And so we're going to be going into that even more. You can register with the link below. And if you want to join the School of Integrative Healing, there's a link for that as well. You can book in a call with my team to talk about if it's a fit for you. And you can also join my free community, where you've got women who are brave and courageous enough to be doing this work, to quote Uili, I'm quoting you now, taking your desires seriously, because that's the work that we do, really. If you've got a desire, it's there for a reason. It's not an accident. It's very much on purpose. That's your intuition telling you, go there. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. And we've got a session later, which is going to be fun and beautiful as well. So ciao to everyone listening. I hope really to see you again in some form. And I'm sending so much love.